Police Department?
Yes, I just saw someone jump out of their window out of probably the 17th, 19th floor of the University Club Tower apartment at 17th and Denver.
The name of that place is University
Club. The glass broke and he fell down. 17th floor.
Wow, 17th floor. All right, sir. You got help on the way.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Today's case looks at a young marriage gone terribly wrong, one that resulted in a young man falling to his death from 25 stories up. Was he pushed, or was it just a terrible accident? Could his pregnant wife, in a fit of rage, really have committed murder? Follow with us as we look into the case of Joshua and Amber Hilberling. Before we start, we would like to send our deepest sympathies to the loved ones of Josh and Amber Hilberling. Tulsa, Oklahoma, a medium-sized city in the heart of America, is considered a great town for young people and a good place to raise your kids. While not a bustling city in the traditional sense, it has a diversified economy and opportunity is plentiful. For a young couple still finding their way in life with one child on the way, it would have been the perfect place to call home. And for Joshua and Amber Hilberling, it certainly should have been. The two met when Amber was 18, newly out of high school. She had been a good student, active in a number of sports, and a member of the Future Farmers of America Club. She lived with her mother and stepfather and had grown up in Tulsa since the age of 5. Joshua, age 22 at the time of the marriage, was a native of Tulsa also, and he had been a standout athlete. He was just starting his career in the United States Air Force. Joshua's father was a career member of the Air Force, and one of his brothers, Zach, was in training to be deployed to Afghanistan at this time as well. The pretty young woman and the dashing airman were outwardly the perfect couple, with a great future in front of them. Both seemingly had loving families and ties to the community they lived in. To outside observers, their courtship and marriage moved quickly, as things sometimes do for young people in love. Just days before Joshua finished technical school with the Air Force, the couple married and held a reception on September 7th, 2010. Joshua's brother Zach was his best man. Joshua was set to be stationed in Fairbanks, Alaska, far from his family and friends. Amber dutifully followed him and set up housekeeping in the new city, a smaller town with an entirely different climate and a way of life. Perhaps it was the massive change of life moving to Alaska created. Perhaps it was the new strain of Joshua's job as he acclimated himself to the area, his new duties, and trying to make new friends. Joshua's brother Zach, though, felt that Amber had been trying to escape from something back home and had managed to bring emotional as well as physical baggage with the couple on their long trip. Amber, he said in a statement of loss document given to the court, had been controlling and manipulative since the first time Joshua had introduced them. He had tried to tell his brother to stay away from her, but had been told that she was being treated badly by her mother, and that was the root of her problems. The courtship, marriage, and move would be of benefit to her and would serve them both well. Marriage, time, and distance didn't help. Things quickly took a turn for the worse. In tearful phone calls back home, Joshua described mental and emotional abuse at the hands of Amber. Then, in later calls, he explained how she had begun to hit him and throw things at him. Zach urged him to call the security forces or the military police on base and file incident reports. Finally, one day, Joshua told Zach that Amber had hit him with a lamp and pushed him down a flight of stairs. He said she had developed a drug problem while there, either creating the arguments or making the situation worse. The couple were referred to on-base counseling, but there were no records of them ever attending. Whatever was going on, it was less than 9 months before the situation came to a head and Joshua was discharged from the Air Force. The couple headed home, she newly pregnant, and they both went to live with her parents at first. Her mother then set the couple up at the University Club Towers apartment building in apartment 2509. That apartment would be the fateful site of a young marriage spinning crazily out of control. The young couple had been arguing again. Amber is now 7 months pregnant. Early in the day, a television had been thrown during a fight, and a window in their bedroom had been cracked. In a sheaf of papers nearby was the motion for protective order filed by Joshua 2 weeks earlier, but never followed up on. The landlord was called about the window, and the couple were told that it was their responsibility and they had to pay to have it fixed. Armando Rosales and his worker were called out and began work. When told the repair would cost about $150, the couple began fighting again. Joshua, at first, says he will fix it himself, but they decide having a professional to do it would be better, and Rosales began to work. Amber re-enters the room a couple of times, each time looking very angry. All the while, Joshua's bags were packed and waiting near the front door. Inside, he had placed his clothing, CDs, and a large set of personal papers. Earlier, he had called for his father to come and get him. He was leaving. His father was unable to take off of work at the Air Force Base so early, so Joshua had called some friends to come and get him. Whatever had been arranged, though, it would turn out to be too late. Mr. Rosales sent his workmen down to get additional materials from the truck, which was parked in the parking deck below. Rosales then stepped into the hall, perhaps to get away from the arguing couple. As he waited, the next-door neighbor of the Hilberlings said they heard someone shout, "No, no, no!" Then running, then a crash, and screams. Rosales heard it too. Below, Rosales' employee was walking to their truck when he heard the glass break. He told the court, "It was like the movies. I see this guy falling. I could hear him screaming. He was really scared all the way down." And then Amber appeared at the broken window seconds later. Across the street, Robert Baker had just stepped outside for a smoke. He looked up at the sound of the window crashing and saw Joshua fall to his death. He immediately called 911. Later, in court, he would testify that he saw the man fly out face first rather than back first. Mr. Rosales opened the door back into the apartment and sees the broken window. He goes over to the window and looks out. Then Amber re-enters the room. She immediately starts saying that her husband fell out the window, that she pushed him. In court, Rosales admits that he was afraid to come near her, thinking that she might push him too. She convinces Rosales to ride down in the elevator with her so she could get to her husband. Rosales does and takes her to the lobby instead of the parking level. He sends her on with the building manager, Brad Blake. Rosales moves away and leaves to call police, putting distance between himself and Amber. Local rescue workers, firemen, and police quickly arrive at the scene. Amber is found holding Joshua's broken body, kissing his head and pleading for help. Firemen on the scene later testified that she begs them to fix him so she doesn't have to go to jail. One Tulsa firefighter on the scene, Dan Newberry, testifies in court that Amber was hysterical when they arrived. They were worried that she would throw herself off the parking deck, which was itself 8 stories above the ground. There was nothing they could do to save Joshua's life. He had died on impact, and the wounds to his body were massive and grievous. As they work to secure the scene, Amber calls her grandmother and asks her to come down to be with her. Tulsa police officer Don Holloway was assigned to take Amber away from the scene and downtown to the main police station. Amber asks if she can wait for her grandmother, and Holloway complies, taking her to part of the lobby that will be away from the gathering news media and onlookers. Once her grandmother arrives, he takes both of them downtown in his patrol car. During the drive, he can hear Amber tell her grandmother that she had pushed Joshua and that he had fallen through the window. Arriving at the police station, he takes the pair to an interview room used by the detective division. He later says that those are often used to hold people right after they're brought in, and that monitoring is used to tell if they have any such needs as water or anything else. He returns to the monitoring room and hears the two women begin to talk. As Amber begins speaking of what happened, he realized that this might be important information, and he begins to record. Amber is distraught and utterly uncomposed as she turns to her grandmother and begins to talk.
I shouldn't be here. Josh is dead. And I'm here. I didn't just lose my husband. Jeannie and Patrick lost their son. Zach lost his brother. His poor grandma's gonna have a heart attack when she finds out that her little Josh is gone. All I kept seeing, I just held his broken body. I just kept looking at him.
Her grandmother realizes that Amber could very well incriminate herself in this accident if she keeps talking. Her young granddaughter is obviously distraught.
Amber,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you're
I
guilty.
can't believe this.
Listen to me. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of things at stake that people are going to be doing their jobs. Patrick and him, they are going to come after you with everything they got. Okay. You know that. So you've got to fight for that one. And you got to fight for yourself.
Who fights for Josh? He's in better hands.
Listen to me. He's in God's Amber, he's in God's hands right now.
He's not supposed to be
No,
there.
he's not supposed to be, but he's in God's hands.
This isn't fair.
Listen to me. For your safety.
I'm gonna go to jail.
Listen to me. You have to listen to me. When they come in and they ask you, say, I don't want to say nothing till my attorney gets here. Do you understand?
The detective's at the scene still, okay? They'll be more clearing a little bit and they'll come down here and talk to you. Get all that, so just hang tight, okay? All right.
Thank you.
But doesn't that make me guilty?
No, that makes the lawyer do his job. Because maybe they will bring everything in.
But regardless, I'm going to jail.
That doesn't mean we're just doing your rights. You just don't understand how things work. You just don't say nothing till your attorney gets here.
Amber seemingly cannot help herself.
Listen to me, they are gonna poke
I just
you.
want to be with Josh.
They're
I just
gonna-
want to die.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Amber, you got that baby there.
But this is Josh's baby.
That's right, that's Josh's baby. That's the only thing that Josh has got is that baby.
He's supposed to be here. I'm such a bad person.
Amber,
No, I don't deserve to live. I don't deserve to be a mom. Josh deserves to be a dad. And Josh isn't even a person anymore.
you can't talk like that.
I'm so sorry.
And you can't talk like that in front of
I can't stop seeing Josh fall.
Time passes in the room, and Amber says a statement that harkens back to the couple's days in Alaska and a warning they had been given by counselors and police there.
They were right. They kept saying if we stay together, I'm gonna kill him. What kind of person am I?
You're a loving person that has been abused by Josh just as well.
No, I'm a horrible person who could do that. Who could do that? Push my husband and make him fall out the window. I wish I could just go back and know that if I pushed him, it was gonna happen.
Amber, quit saying you pushed him out the window. Did you intentionally?
No, of course not.
Okay, that's what they're gonna take it as, baby. That's why I said everything that you say, they're gonna subscribe in a different matter. Because they're gonna say, okay, Amber.
I just don't understand this whole...
Legal system.
No, not that. I don't understand the whole pattern of events of the last year. Us getting married and going to Alaska. Everything in Alaska, me being pregnant. Coming back here, getting kicked out of Mom's house. Going to the apartment. And then all for it to Josh just fall out of a high-rise building.
And there, the whole case boils down to a whirlwind of events swirling around the young married couple, only to come undone in a moment of rage. Joshua's family would maintain that he was trying to give Amber a life away from her parents where she could heal and grow, but that she had turned to abusing him and drugs even during her pregnancy. Amber's family pointed fingers at Joshua, saying that he was the abusive one, and at times even alleging that he was on drugs at the time he went out the window on that fateful day. Two sides, fiercely loyal to their children, would square off to protect their own. Local police, though, had to wade through the evidence at hand. Amber, by her own admission, had a hand in Joshua's death, and she was charged with his murder. Questions remained, though. Was it a cold-blooded murder, premeditated and planned? Nothing seemed to point to this beyond the earlier warning that she could be the death of him if they didn't split up. Was it second-degree murder, a crime of passion in the heat of the moment? Witnesses at the apartment and those viewing Joshua's fall certainly seemed to point to at least one or more heated arguments leading up to the incident. Was it something between manslaughter and negligent homicide? Amber's admissions at the scene and the interview rooms certainly pointed to it. Amber was released on bond as the state and her defense began building their cases. She gave birth to a baby boy and then fell into trouble again, ending up with her losing the right to freedom before the trial on two separate occasions. Conditions of her pretrial freedom included keeping a curfew, staying at either her mother or grandmother's house, and the wearing of a monitoring device each evening, and she would be subject to urinalysis and breathalyzer tests. Records say that she missed curfew or allowed the monitoring device to lose power on 10 different occasions. Monitoring agents also noted that she would regularly ask to change the location of where she was supposed to be each night, sometimes with just minutes to spare before her curfew. And on 2 occasions, marijuana traces were found in her urine, as well as times when the urine was so diluted that it could not be tested. Amber ended up back in the local jail within 6 months, left to wait for her trial. While she waited, 2 different inmates at the jail reported having conversations with her both times where she laughed about pushing Joshua out the window, even telling one that she'd killed the bastard. Outside of jail, Amber's story officially changed. In court, she claimed that she had acted in self-defense and that Joshua had attacked her. It was implied that she may have been under the influence at the time. She also said that when he grabbed her by the shoulders, she pushed back against him, and Joshua tripped over some large candlesticks and fell through the window. Prosecutors were able to pick apart her case. Autopsy results showed the vast extent of injuries that Joshua had suffered. Both legs were broken multiple times, both arms were broken, most of his ribs were fractured, his sternum and his pelvis had been broken as well. There were massive internal injuries. The toxicology report came back showing there were absolutely no traces of illicit drugs in his system at all. Prosecutors produced a photo taken at the scene showing the tall, spindly candlesticks by the window had not been disturbed. Detectives who had also been called to the scene that day testified they could see no signs of struggle in the room and that there was nothing out of place. Measurements at the scene showed the bottom sill of the window was 2 feet 2 inches off the floor. The window then rose another 4 feet 4 inches beyond that. Joshua's 6'4" frame made it very easy for him to fall through that opening if pushed. The window integrity itself was then called into question by the defense. The building had been constructed in 1966, and the glass in that particular window was part of the original construction. Composed of 2 panes of glass separated by a small gap, they did not feature any lamination, and they were not tempered as modern glass panes are in a high-rise building. Inspections show that the gasket around the window itself had deteriorated over time as well. Anyone coming into even slightly rough contact with that window could have potentially fallen through, the defense argued. Twice before the trial began, Amber was offered plea deals. Once for a charge of second-degree murder, where she would be given 5 years in prison with 15 years of probation after that, which she rejected. A second option was given for a straight 7-year prison sentence on account of second-degree murder, but she turned that down as well, preferring to stick to her story of self-defense. In the end, it took the jury just 3 hours to deliberate the case and find her guilty of second-degree murder. Facing a sentence that could go from 10 years to life in prison, she was given a sentence of 25 years and a $10,000 fine and was ordered to pay the funeral expenses for her husband. She later appealed that conviction on the basis of poor representation. The Oklahoma Court of Appeals upheld the case in 2014. In the coming years, Amber would do a couple of jailhouse interviews for the BBC and for the Dr. Phil show. After being approached by a local Tulsa television station about an interview, she responded in writing, stating that while she had been burned by interviewers before, she would be willing to consent to the interview. That letter arrived back at the station, but it was too late, as the next day after it had been postmarked, Amber was found dead, hanging in her cell on October 24, 2016. An autopsy showed that Amber had died from being hanged by an electrical cord. There were linear scars on her left wrist and forearm. Toxicology reports showed that she had a degree of methamphetamines in her blood, and there were also traces of amphetamines and citalopram, an antidepressant. Family and friends point to the dating of the letter and the death the following day as potential proof that she had not taken her own life in prison. Families still hurt from what happened on that fateful day, losing young members who never had more than a chance to get their life started. And there was the baby boy who was born, who is now being raised by his maternal grandparents, who will never get to know his parents. The relationship of Joshua and Amber Hilberling quickly went volatile and became the end of each in turn. Domestic violence cases abound in America and around the world, and so commonly, as is in this case, there were opportunities for those involved to seek help or simply escape. Counseling or battered spouse shelters are available in just about every community. Protective orders are also available. Those resources, though, often go unused by those who need them the most. Perhaps this story could have turned out differently, and maybe one that wouldn't have ended so early, so tragically. If you are a victim of domestic abuse, whether you are male or female, reach out to the resources in your area. Protect yourself and the ones you love. If you found this case compelling, don't forget to like the video. Comment down below your take on it, and please subscribe to the channel. Also, hit that notification bell in order to stay up to date each time we reveal a new shocking case. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes peeled. You never know what's lurking in the shadows.